You know that feeling when you just want to kill someone and hurt them because of the way they treated you, because of the way they disrespected you or insulted you to your face with no regard for your own feelings? You ever feel like when your own team disappoints you extremely, especially in a very important game, that you want to physically hurt and assault members of that said team and maybe other people related to team? Or when the opponent defeats your team and you put all the hatred and all the emotions of of defeat and anger towards the winner and actually want, like, you have the feeling of desire for their ill will towards them, right? What I'm getting at is your feelings is not reality. Okay? I'm going to say that again. Our feelings are not reality. Many times we feel like doing very extreme things, we're in extreme emotional states, and therefore we think that it's justified to act out emotionally, especially towards other people. I'm here to tell you it's not. It's definitely not. Okay. Unfortunately, people are gonna have to learn the hard way this conundrum, but it is never ever a good idea to unload a high emotional state towards people you know and love, and forget about people you don't know and don't love, because then you're really in trouble. Okay, but in either case, our feelings are not actual reality, and just because you're feeling heavily emotionally towards any situation, that does not necessarily mean you are in danger. That does not necessarily mean that you're fighting for your life. Okay? Now, are there people fighting for their life? Yes. There's world conflicts happening right now. God bless you folks in the South Asia right now. Prayers to you. You're all aware of what I'm talking about. Okay? Yes. Is there actual crises in the world today that people are beyond their control of being part of? Yes. People are in war-torn countries. People are in impoverished countries. People are losing financially, physically, mentally, etc. Yes. Now, what I'm saying is, it's not a good idea to trust your feelings in the sense that they should determine all your behaviors, right? Because if you do that to the wrong person, you're gonna pay the price. There's another way of saying that. You might have you have freedom of choice. You don't have freedom of consequence. Okay, every action dictates consequences, right, in life. Okay, and so it doesn't matter how mad you are because of a family member or because your team lost, okay, or because of what you see on the news, especially, God forbid, mainstream media, which, I'll be honest, is like the biggest culprit of a mental health crisis and creating like false narratives and emotional responses in people. That's got to be the biggest culprit known to man. But whatever. But yeah, if you constantly feed yourself those things, and you in your mind you look at your life, even though you live in a nice home, probably that your bills are taken care of, you're relatively healthy, right? You have your parents are alive and well, okay? You have food in the fridge. If you think that way, all your blessings, you really don't have problems, and therefore your emotions are not reality. Does that make sense? Do not let the behaviors of others destroy your inner peace. Phenomenal quote there. Winners and successful people do not let their emotions determine their actions. And if you notice, the most successful people in the world, not to compare oneself to them and belittle yourself, not to say that, but the most successful people in the world in all categories, okay, they do not let their emotions define their reality. Okay? Losing a game, if Michael Jordan decided to quit basketball because he didn't make his 10th grade team, he wouldn't be Michael Jordan, would he? No. Tom Brady, he got drafted. he almost went undrafted. I forgot if he did or not, but I think the very end of the draft he got picked, and he boldly declared he'll be the best draft pick for that franchise, and pretty much he was later on. So yeah, winners, successful people, sorry, they don't let their emotions determine their actions. Okay, and they also understand that your emotions does not define reality, which also is actually a good plug for a book, Emotional Intelligence. Phenomenal book. I forgot the author's name, but have it on Audible, and specifically mentions that people who are emotionally intelligent understand their emotions are not reality. Example, day to day, someone cuts you off in traffic, you're going to work, cruising along, all right, hopefully on speed limit, and someone cuts you off. Does that mean you should honk at them and chase them down and tailgate them and maybe cause an accident? Probably not, right? Um, Another example in terms of traffic, people are gonna tailgate you at some point, right? People are gonna tailgate you, and yeah, there's brake checking. Okay, fine, safely, but yeah, someone tailgating you does not mean hit the brakes, and especially going on 80 on the highway, right? That's only leading to accident, and um, someone tailgating you or doing you wrong in traffic does not mean retaliation and giving into road rage. That's gonna make you feel better, and but by virtue maybe causing actual accidents or worse on traffic, right? So guess what? You can simply say, all right, I'm just gonna move on over next lane, not worry about it. They're probably going through a lot themselves emotionally, but that doesn't mean it has to impact me. Do not let the behaviors of others destroy your inner peace. Okay? So someone might honk at you. That doesn't mean you have to get mad, but don't get me wrong. We're talking to a person that has gone through an insane amount of healing over an entire lifetime, and especially a lifetime of generational trauma, which is a whole other topic. But certainly, I can understand that, right? That just the fact that someone honks at you triggers anxiety, which I know I have had or I still have, but I'm working through it, and so I understand. I don't let that determine my reaction. Okay, so now what happens, right, when we're in a heavy emotional state? So when your body senses you're in a heavy emotional state, it releases the stress hormone, which is called cortisol. You can look that up. Okay, I'm by no means a medical expert, but this stress hormone is released in very stressful situations, of course, but the body doesn't know the difference today between an actual stressful situation the body doesn't know the difference today between an actual stressful situation like a lion or a tiger, which our ancestors dealt with, or someone just engaging in a verbal argument on the street. Okay, so the stress hormone triggers regardless, and it gives you in the flight or fight response, right? And so, yeah, that in evolutionary speaking, the purpose of that stress hormone is for our ancestors to survive encounters with actual danger, actual lions and tigers trying to kill you. And if you need to survive, your body needs to be in a state of stress. Okay, that's real danger, and you in order to survive, an adrenaline needs to be released. That only happens via cortisol, stress hormone, which is in the presence of actual danger. Now, in 2025, okay, but besides stupid memes on the internet, no one's actually fighting lions and tigers on a real life basis. Okay, no one's actually encountering them in the jungle, on the street, or whatever, or wolves. Are there like homeless dogs, or are there scenarios like that, right? Like animals in the street sometimes, and yeah, like wildcats. Sure, okay, I'm not talking about that, but real hardcore like top predators. No one's gonna have to run across them on a day-to-day basis, right? Um, so what I'm saying is, we have developed over time as humans a flight or fight response to stress, but we don't face what our ancestors faced in terms of actual danger, ergo lions and tigers. We face people cutting us off in traffic. We face a mean text from a friend, right? Or someone we consider a friend. Or even worse, a very mean text from a family member, from a close family member. And even worse than that, an actual verbal altercation with a loved one, with a close loved one. Yeah, that will absolutely trigger your trigger your flight or fight response. Unfortunately, does it happen a lot? Very commonly, yes. Does it need to happen? No. Is that a real danger, or is that a real problem in life? Or I should say, is that really something that means that you should feel bad? No. So someone else's behaviors or emotional state does not need to reflect your own. Okay? A person who has control of their emotions, in check of their feelings, and in light of the higher goal and the higher mission, will go very far in life. Okay, so now that being said, right, like I said, emotions are not your reality, and yes, you might feel a certain way. That doesn't mean give in to the feeling and cause actual problems like accidents or physical altercations with people. But now nobody's saying is your feelings are invalid. Okay, when your best friend betrays you, your family member is mean to you, someone cuts you off in traffic, the dog's barking. No one's saying it's not valid. Sure, it's valid. You can feel exactly how you feel, right? The question is, does the feeling serve an overall purpose? And is it going to positively impact the situation right now? And if it's not, is it really worth giving into it via your behaviors, right? Okay, what's a good example? Army instructor, military commanders, and football coaches, they're super mean. And they're the meanest, toughest, and harshest people for most young people will ever come across, right? I know I did. I used to be in the high school marching band, had a very militant band director who I totally respected and kind of feared at that time. And I'm glad I did. And I very respect that person looking back too. But yeah, look, if you, on the micro, yes, nobody wants someone to yell at them, verbally abuse them, right? Nobody wants that. I don't think anyone likes that feeling of being actually yelled and screamed at, or made to be felt lesser than, right? But if you look on the macro level, okay, zoom out, look at the big picture. You cannot have a good nation, without a military force, without an army, right? And you can't have an army without strong people, mostly men, but I digress. Strong people, right? You can't have strong people if they're not strong mentally. And if you want them to be strong mentally, they have to be able to handle stress, right? Ergo, if you want a strong nation, you need strong army and you need strong people, and therefore you need to handle stress. And as you can see, that's why military instructors will be as tough as possible, because if you want to live in security and safety with real military protection, that's what it takes. Okay? And if you want a football team to be mentally strong and be successful and ready to win, you can't have a soft person. You can't have everything's okay and no one's gonna hurt your feelings. It can't work, right? So in light of a bigger goal, in light of a bigger mission, your feelings is not important in this situation, right? So your feelings isn't reality. Is the army instructor or the football coach an asshole? Yes, you can feel that way. They probably are at that very minute. Yes. Are they serving a higher purpose? Are they trying to accomplish a higher objective? Are they on a mission? Yes. And is their behavior serving that mission for you to feel that way, to become something greater than you are? Also, yes. Right? So, if you want strong nations and strong military forces, strong men, you're going to have to overcome stress. That's that. Okay? So, there's a purpose for that stress, right? And so, yeah. So, like I said, it's okay to feel how you feel. It's perfectly fine. And everyone's going to feel a certain way, right? And your boss is going to make you feel anxious. Okay. Your university professor is going to make you feel anxious. Okay. Especially when you're in school and you're worried about your paper. You're worried about doing well in your test, right? You're worried about if they like you or not. That doesn't really matter in the overall scheme of things. But like I was saying, right? What's the overall goal? Look at an overall goal, an overall purpose, okay, and look at it through that lens, and then reassess your feelings through that lens, okay? So if you are a potential soldier, if you are trying to serve in the armed forces, or if you're trying to be a great, a strong, tough football player on a team, or an athlete on any sports team, but football is a great example. So that being said, the mission comes first. The mission comes first. The goals comes first. So your feelings are not the consideration here. Okay? So am I saying your feelings don't matter? No. But am I saying that the mission and the goal comes first and that supersedes your feelings? Yes. Okay? So in other words, your feeling is not reality, and the person behind you in traffic, they're probably going through the one who's tailgating you or cut you off. They're probably going through their own emotional things too. Everyone is, right? Someone yells at you on the street, especially if you walk in a big cities with people walking every second, like I was just doing in Europe. Yeah, you're never going to see them again. So who cares what they yell at you? Okay? Who cares if the homeless guy says something bad to you or makes you feel bad? If you're rushing to get to work, you're probably never going to see them again either. But I digress, right? So we tend to view the world through our imagined reality, okay? And by that I mean our truth or our subjective view, and which reminds me, in another episode I can talk about how there's more than one reality, okay? But first of all, we all have a subjective view of the world, right? Like I myself am subjectively discussing certain things with YouTube and the audience, those who are listening, and I have my own, of course, views and a lifetime of programming in here that I can reflect out there, right? Obviously. Now, what has impacted our subjective imagined reality today? Social media, mainstream news, technology as a whole. People forget 20 years ago there was no social media. Yeah, was there mainstream news? Yes, and it used to be reliable back then. But I digress. So social media is the main culprit, okay? And so if you're scrolling, and now that you can curate, anyone can curate a social media feed, right? So you can curate your social media feed. So that means what? If you're only viewing news of war happening, murders happening, okay? Financial crises happening, which, by the way, the mainstream media is notorious for this. Is it real? In some sense, yes. Is it based on truth? In some sense, yes. Does that mean it's only news? No, it doesn't. Does that mean that there's positive things that are happening? yeah, there are positive things happening, but that's not the focus, right? But anyway, um, if you view life through the lens of only negative things that you see on social media, that is 1000% imagined reality. It's not real. Now, one can argue social media is not real. Now, I know a whole generation believes it is, but it's not. Okay? Um, what happens when you turn off your phone? What happens when you lose your social media account? Is it still real? Right? Like, are you still able to get outside your house and walk up and down the street? Are you still able to get in your car, go to the mall, and go to the grocery store, buy your groceries? Yes. Right? So, social media should not be viewed as reality, but we live in a time where people tend to view whatever they see on social media as reality. Ergo, that is an imagined reality. Ergo, your feelings have now superseded actual objective truth. Okay? And so, yeah, social media is probably our biggest culprit and mainstream media. Okay? So if that's all you're seeing, and by that I mean you're viewing, but yes, are there tragic events happening around the world? Yes. Are there people dying in conflicts worldwide and God forbid in the Middle East? Yes. Has that been ongoing for a long time? Yes. Is that terrible news and it's very sad news? Yes. Does that mean that good things are not happening in your local area? No. Does that mean that you are not living a good life yourself? No, it doesn't. Right? So, if you simply view the world through that lens, that is not objective reality. That is a subjective, imagined reality, and you just let your social media feed determine your outlook. You're not seeking knowledge. You're not seeking real life experiences. Someone who's been driving since the age of 16 plus, oh my God, we're turning, that's 20 plus years of driving now. I'm pretty sure that 20 years of driving is going to supersede all the videos that you could watch about driving on social media or online, right? Someone who's been cooking at home for many years, it doesn't matter how many videos you watch. If you never cooked, you can't fully grasp that concept, right? Or so forth. The swimming concept is the best concept. It doesn't matter how many videos you watch of swimming, okay? It doesn't matter how many examples of different forms of swimming you see, or videos you watch, or books you read. If you don't get in the pool and actually swim, you're not going to swim, okay? So people who let their emotions dictate every actions or thoughts, unfortunately, they're not real winners, or they're not looking towards a successful life. Okay? So people who are looking for success, they have to put their emotions on the back burner because they have to have the goal in front of them. Okay? Success means letting go of emotions that are not serving your mission. Okay? Not serving your mission or your values or your overall goals. Okay? That's called emotional intelligence. Okay, emotional intelligence is important. It's very critical. We all need to have it. And now this takes time. Becoming emotionally intelligent is very, very crucial, but it takes time to develop. Nobody's born with it. And you certainly don't, I don't think you learn it in school, right? Especially, I don't think you learn in the first 20 years of life, to be honest. Unless you maybe just happen to have an upbringing where you learn that from a young age. Okay. But guess what, man? Without emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, a person like that is going to struggle with work. You're going to struggle having any sort of job. I mean, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, Walgreens, McDonald's. So that's bare minimum menial jobs, and forget about corporate jobs, right? Without emotional regulation of yourself, because you're going to feel emotion, that doesn't mean you can't learn to regulate it, right? You're not going to be able to sustain a job. You're not going to be able to maintain relationships, which is super crucial for life. You're not going to be able to maintain friendships or grow friendships, have potential solid network, positive network, nothing. Okay. Now I'm not saying to tolerate disrespect. Just to be clear, I'm not saying tolerate disrespect. I'm not saying tolerate anything and everything. I'm not saying feel nothing. Definitely didn't say that. Okay. Um, I'm not saying don't have emotions. I'm saying understand that they're not your reality, and therefore don't give power to your emotions, especially in light of a bigger goal, of a bigger mission. Okay. Okay. So a child might be upset at their parents for what they considered cruel punishment when you're 5, 6, 7. Okay. But that child has no clue of all the sacrifices that parent had to do just to get to that point of life for the child to be in a position to be upset. Right. And I know I can tell you having an upbringing that very strict discipline. Okay. I'm very thankful now. Yes, does anyone want to feel bad or upset when when they're punished very severely for whatever kind of habits or actions? Nobody wants to feel that way. No child seeks punishment. Okay, unless you're just really mentally unstable or whatever. But what I'm saying is the punishment should fit the crime, right? Let's just be fair. Punishment should fit the crime. Um, every child feels that way when they feel like the parent's being unfair, but you can't possibly know what the parent's going through until you are your own a parent yourself, or at least you're at a certain age where you understand what it takes to be a successful parent and raise a successful child. Okay? Before the age of 25, the prefrontal cortex, according to studies, and don't quote me entirely, it's not even fully formed before the age of 25. So your brain's prefrontal cortex, which is necessary for not just information but emotional regulation, it's still growing and it's still processing. Okay? So before the age of 25, your brain is not fully formed, especially if you're a male. Females, I know they mature faster, but your brain's not fully formed as a male. And so it's more important for you to understand emotional regulation, okay, and understand that emotions are not your reality. We all understand that children don't have a control of their emotions, right? That's perfectly understandable. Babies, obviously, babies are gonna cry. They're just a bundle of emotion, and they're supposed to be by nature. We're all born. Everybody was born with mother and father, and you were a baby at one point, and you cried a lot, and you caused your parents stress, right? But we all understand that. But you're not gonna take it out on a child, on a baby, if you understand as a fully functional, emotionally regulated adult, emotionally intelligent adult, that they're a child and they're gonna be like that, and you have to control yourself as an adult. That's your responsibility. Okay, it's not the baby's fault to cry when by nature that's what they do. It's it's your fault or your responsibility as an adult to understand that it's on you to handle yourself and to navigate your emotions and prioritize what's important and not give in to your emotional reactions. Okay, especially when a baby's involved. Can we agree there? Okay, I think we can agree there. Okay, so go in some quotes here real quick. Then I'll end with a few pointers. So from Twitter, from my favorite X social media platform, inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. Courtesy of Dale Carnegie. The world is a malleable place. If you know what you want and you go for it with maximum energy and passion, the world will reconfigure itself around you. Mark Andreessen, CEO. You can't compete with someone who is having fun. Tiago Forte. Worrying does not take away tomorrow's troubles. It just takes away today's peace. Absolutely brilliant. And lastly, a Japanese legend says, if you get on the wrong train, the best course of action is to get off the nearest station. The longer it takes you to get off the train, the more expensive the return trip will be. and that's a absolutely beautiful metaphor for real life. Okay, I hope that's very valuable there. And so yeah, to wrap up today about your feelings is not your reality. Okay, so coming from as a person of first generation South Asian immigrant, okay, I can tell you parents sacrificed everything and anything just to get to this point that we can live a life here. Okay. And if you don't see that as a first generation child, that your parents actually sacrificing, you to you, especially if you're kind of spoiled and you've had everything like handed to you, you're gonna take everything for granted. Ergo, you are a privileged person. And there's a quote I heard that privilege is invisible to those who have it. Okay? So if you were expected to get everything you want at the drop of a dime because you always had it, you are privileged and to you it's invisible. But that is that's a life of like a essentially that might as well be a life of a millionaire to a person on the street or to a person of lower income or a person who saw their parents struggle. Okay? So privilege tends to be invisible to those who have it. Right. Life is not on screen. Okay. Now, I understand the sort of tiny bit hypocrisy, me on a screen talking to you about that, but I'm just communicating via this wonderful platform, this message that life itself is not on a screen. Okay. It's actually outside the home, in nature, with quality people, right? With people of purpose and trying to accomplish dreams and goals. That's actual life, right? So essentially limiting our social media is very important for that regard. We live in an overstimulated time, abundance of technology, right? On a personal note, right? I grew up very super emotional and I had no clue at the time, but that actually was a sign. Actually, no, that was a cause of actual deep um that was a actually symptom, I should say, of generational trauma, basically. Okay, now until you go on an actual self-healing journey and understand kind of what generational trauma looks like and what personality disorder looks like, you have no idea that you possess symptoms of that when you feel like that's just your feelings are your feelings, especially when it's very severe. Now, anyway, the more emotional you are, you actually become a target for those who are basically going to bully others. Okay, and because the more emotional you are, especially outwardly emotional, um, especially if anyone who's capable of angering you is capable, they're able to basically control you. Okay, and if you don't go on your own personal development and self-healing journey, you don't understand that giving into anger, especially too much, you're simply giving control of your feelings to someone else, and that's a lot of power to give someone else. Okay, and as someone who has gone, and I'm not here to criticize or whatever. I'm not here to harp on my past, but someone who's been bullied and who was used to be super emotional and didn't understand that that was actually just a symptom of generational trauma and probably some personality disorders that I had to overcome. Yeah, I was bullied, and yes, I was an easy target, and yeah, those guys, whoever did, they saw me easy target, and they were able to anger me, and I became slave to anger many times, right? And I didn't even have self control, but that's guess what? That's just a symptom of a bigger disease, generational trauma, and that would not be clear had I not gone through self healing, personal development. Am I making sense? So so yes, I highly recommend everyone go through their own self healing and personal development journey. I feel like in my understanding of life, a person cannot become the best version of themselves if they do not go through personal development and self-healing. Everyone's dealing with something in here, but until you go through that journey, you have no clue as to the extent of it. So, lastly, the best way I think, the best things a person can do, right? I highly recommend Stoicism. Okay, Stoicism is the, I think, greatest answer to today, the overstimulation and over high emotional states of people today is Stoicism. Okay, there's so many YouTube videos and channels about Stoicism going into in-depth detail about it and the history of it and how it dates back thousands of years, and that many successful people and Stoics have seen incredible insight on life and the universe by going through this. Okay, breathing exercises, very important. If you learn basic meditation, which I highly recommend to everybody, just 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day of basic breathing, meditation, visualization, you're going to overcome any and most sorts of personal anxieties, personality disorders, emotional states, whatever. Those things are the single greatest deterrent for heavy emotional state, for heavy anger, for heavy anxiety, depression. Stoicism, breathing, meditation, and of course, without being obvious, diet and exercise. 100% I can tell you, diet and exercise makes a big difference to that too. So yeah, and not controlling one's emotions, especially anger, can lead to really bad outcomes like physical altercations, police action, or obviously we know what's the cause of a lot of actual crimes in the world. Unfortunately, murder, lack of self-regulation, lack of emotional regulation, a lack of emotional intelligence. Okay, so you being emotionally intelligent can actually save lives, your own and others. Okay, and lastly, a phenomenal quote by Robert Greene, the author of 48 Laws of Power, which I'm currently reading, and it's a phenomenal book, and I can't wait to go through it. Wanting to be liked all the time is a major weakness. It's much greater to be respected or feared than it is to be liked all the time. And here's another secret of the universe. There's no such thing as making everybody happy. Trust me, as a naive young man in his 20s who believed he could do that, 1,000% promise you there's no universe that you can make everyone happy. Okay? It's never going to happen. You shouldn't aim to do that. I'm not saying you should aim to piss everyone off. I'm just saying you shouldn't aim to make everyone happy. So therefore, focus on your goals, focus on your path, focus on your self-healing, self-regulation journey. And remember, your reality is not your feelings is not your reality. So next time you're in a heavy emotional state and you're feeling anxiety, you're feeling heavy anger, and you're feeling heavy emotion, especially when someone that you like or admire or trust is on the other end of that, and maybe the actual cause of that, the best thing you can do is take a deep breath. Take 3 deep breaths. Slow down your heart rate. Okay, slow down your breathing. Mitigate your anxiety. Mitigate your feeling. And remove yourself from the equation at worst. Okay? Because the more you give in to that feeling, the worse the outcome is going to be. And nobody wants a physical altercation with, obviously, no one on the streets. You never know what could happen there. And certainly not your own loved ones, your own flesh and blood. That is the worst case scenario. An actual physical altercation with your flesh and blood. So an ounce, in other words, an ounce of prevention is worth 1 pound of the cure. Okay? So anything you can do to prevent physical altercation or anything leading to that, you should absolutely do it. But like I said, I recommend Stoicism. I recommend breathing exercises. I recommend meditation, and heavily emphasize diet and exercise as a lifestyle, a way of life, and not just a hobby. With that, I'm done. Glad to have you guys on this episode. If you like this episode, please hit the like button, the thumbs up, share, and subscribe for more. And comment below on any sort of emotional states or anything. If you can kind of relate to this podcast today on being in a heavy emotional state, and if that led to very poor outcomes or not giving into emotional states leading to better outcomes. If you have any stories, please comment below, let me know. But if you like, hit the thumbs up button, like and subscribe for more. With that, this is Smosh. And remember, at the end of the day, it's just some perspective.